Hello and welcome to HDphilosophy Plays Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I have been waiting so long to play my favorite RPG, the one that defined my childhood, but unfortunately they didn't make Chrono Trigger, so here I am playing my second favorite RPG, Final Fantasy VII. One thing I want to point out is I truly believe without Sephiroth, and Sephiroth was my favorite character of all of the bunch. Without Sephiroth, I don't even think I'd idolize this guy right here, Darth Vader. I actually really fell for Star Wars much later on in my youth. I was 16 or 17. The prequels came out, and I really loved the Anakin striving for power type of thing, and that strife for power is what inevitably was his downfall. And I don't think without Sephiroth and Sephiroth's impact on me when I was younger, that would have been a thing, So we'll probably get deeper into that as we analyze the eco-terrorists of Avalanche, the capitalists that are Shinra, and then the biblical corpus or the religious aspect of what is Sephiroth and what he represents with Genova, shorthand for Jehovah, and the things of that nature. Now, one thing I want to get into before we jump into the game, I'm really interested to see here what they do. We fought Sephiroth towards the end of the first game. And while I loved that fight and everything that went, everything that included, one thing I was really worried about was where do we go from here? The original Final Fantasy VII, we didn't fight Sephiroth. He didn't grace us with his presence to fight us till well later. So I'm where are they going to go from here? I really hope they don't try to introduce a Snoke or something like that, like a new baddie having to bring back Palpatine. Obviously, I'm talking about the fact that Rey beat Kylo in episode 1, and they were flailing to try to figure out what to do after that. This guy right here, Luke didn't stand a chance against him until the third episode, This is the greatness that is Darth Vader. So I'm really interested to see where they go from here as far as the big baddie. But here we go. Another episodes of playing along. I will experience everything of this game along with you folks. For those who are interested in listening to some professor of philosophy talk about these games and enjoy these games. But here we go. It is kind of nice though to hear a Sephiroth before the fall into madness. Something I'll discuss, my thoughts on it when we get there. I already spoke about the correlation of Darth Vader and Sephiroth, to be somebody of so much power that the power itself almost causes the madness. But in Sephiroth's case, it was almost
you'll burn yourself out running like that.
I'm not even close to burned out. Not with all the training I've had.
Guess you really are the best there is.
With Sephiroth, it's almost like he had an idea of who he was and what he was built for. And then all of a sudden, the lie that unnerves his entire life is what happens. It's like the Taoist in me, my love of Taoism. It's just he built a story that he believed in. It was his foundation, and that's the order of Taoism, right? And of course, the yin and yang is the order and chaos meeting together. But the story that he was told ended up being an entire lie. So the life that he thought he had was not the life that he had. It's like the Platonic cave, you think the shadows are real, you think you're in a free area, and then all of a sudden you are ripped from the cave when you discover, as your shackles are undone, that your whole life is a lie and you've been living in a cave. What's amazing about the cave experience for Plato is the people who are manipulating the shadows are the ones who know you're in a cave. So it's you not only realize you're in a cave, but you realize that there are people in your life who have been manipulating you. So you have to come to terms with the fact that you were so ignorant to be fooled in that particular way, you know? So Sephiroth is a great example of the fallout of a Platonic cave moment where the cave itself was your entire existence. What do they often do? Well, they often attack the person who's rescuing them, but I guess in this case, Sephiroth had the power to go after all the people who manipulated the shadows. Oh, shoot, I did have it. Like the worst Sephiroth in the world right now.
I've got this. Farewell. For you.
Come on, attack. And that's my counter. Sick. That's so awesome. Yeah, like I said, I've always been fascinated with the powerful falling due to their own power being that which it's like with power not only becomes ambition, but with power also becomes expectation, also comes expectations. So one thing that really got me into reading was the Clone Wars in Star Wars. And what I was just so fascinated with was Anakin's training and his fall, right? Now, his fall was due to his power, but also due to everyone's expectations of the chosen one. And there was this one battle where there were so many Padawans lost, and then like the Emperor Palpatine actually pulled Anakin out of there, because I'm guessing Palpatine saw that he would have died if he stayed there. But all the Padawans ended up dying in that battle. And there's this instance where Obi-Wan looks at Anakin, who, you know, survived, and there's this being disappointed that Anakin didn't find a way. Anakin didn't find a way to achieve victory. And it's just like, oh man. You know, you see like the seeds of his demise being planted. And then the relationship of Obi-Wan, who was a brother to him when he needed a father, you know? Was always more of a brother to him than a father. When he needed a father, you know? But yeah, when you are the chosen one, when you are the number one, everybody looks to you in every instance, and that is a heavy weight, a heavy responsibility, not only on you, but on their judgment of you, you know? Double-edged sword of high expectations. The fall of a hero. Tragic. Oh, this just reminds me. Oh. So, like when people talk about religion, often people will say like, but look at these priests that are doing these horrendous things, and there are evil people out there, but there's something to be said about somebody's expectations of somebody being much more pious and holy being the one who's doing evil, you know? That has so much more ramifications than just some random individual. It's such a fascinating aspect of what's like virtue epistemology, or like the skill of the individual, you know? It's like, oh man, of course we hold the people who claim to follow a godlike, benevolent being, of course we hold them to a higher standard. That's the point. I hold them to a higher standard than like an anarchist that doesn't believe in anything, right? But it's like when you have somebody like Sephiroth, who is considered like the pinnacle of heroism, and they fall, it almost becomes like, well, who am I? I'm not him. He fell. I remember feeling this when Chester Binghamton, I don't even know if I said that last name right, the lead singer of Linkin Park, You know, when I was a kid, when I was a teen, I listened to Linkin Park all the time. And, you know, I wasn't like more depressed than a natural teenage boy at that time. But, you know, I had my qualms. I had my conflicts that I had to deal with. And Linkin Park's music was an incredible outlet for me. It made me feel better. It was like somebody was going through the same thing, but then they were able to like fight their depression with some kind of purpose. And when Chester Binghamton killed himself, when he passed away, that really hurt me. Why? Because if this person who had an amazing outlet, who had the depression, but seemed like he found an outlet for that depression, an outlet of fame and success, and that wasn't enough, I was like, how am I supposed to deal with that? So that's what heroes do. That's what the virtuous do. You know, when the virtuous fall, you lose hope. It was the theme with Superman versus Batman, where Batman realized Superman is hope, you know? And when you lose a hero like that, it's almost like you lose the idea that they represented, that gave people hope and admiration, gets tarnished too. Yeah. If they can fall, who am I? If Chester Binghamton's success, where he found an outlet for his depression, if that didn't save him, who am I? When Robin Williams, who would make millions of people laugh, you know? And that outlet didn't give him satisfaction. Who am I? That's the weight of the heroes, by the way, to bring that around. That's the weight of history right there. This is what happens when your creation comes from malevolence instead of benevolence. The whole concept of the ideal is based on this fundamental theory that we are created with a good purpose, the good purpose. Something Nietzsche said, you know, how you're going to wash away the blood in your hands now. Nietzsche believed that when we killed God,
Mother is waiting.
we would kill all form of morality. Not that an atheist couldn't be virtuous, but that logically they would have no reason to be. Boom. The power of Sephiroth. So when I say telos, I mean ultimate aim, by the way.
I keep asking myself, why couldn't I have come to sooner? If I had, maybe I could have saved the village.
Can I pause without it leaving? Yes. Okay. So this is really interesting. I use the example from Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica of the arrow aiming at the target. Side part: the etymology of sin is actually a target that hits an arrow that hits its target. So if you can imagine a purpose, an aim, you are heading towards an aim, right? Imagine a archer that fires an arrow at a target, all right? And obviously the one that's being propelled through the air is the arrow, right? Well, if the arrow becomes aware, becomes self-conscious, and looks and sees the target and sees, here, I'm about to hit the target, but then they look back at the archer, and what they discover from the archer is a malevolent gaze, this sadistic kind of smile. All of a sudden, what the arrow can realize is that where it's aiming and where it's heading is what is satisfying to that malevolent entity. All of a sudden, hitting the target isn't a moral good. It could be the most atrocious of actions. You see? So when you become aware and you look back at your creator, the thing that is moving you forward, the goodwill, what you think is goodwill or good intention as you're moving through your life, and then you look back at the first inception of your birth and you see malevolence, well, then that means your aim is malevolent. Your aim is what a malevolent entity would want. Be very wary of those who throw God out of the system. Because if your very being, if the very being that created you is malevolent and is happy with your existence, then it's almost like your existence becomes malevolence itself. Kant, in order to create a categorical, universal application, had to cede goodwill to a divine moral authority, a divinely good moral authority that we have access to as beings of rationality, you know? But he couldn't prove God's existence, so he split it away from science. He said, no, this is the realm. Science is the realm of the physical, of the scientific, of the determined world. This other realm is the realm of God and the realm of morals. Now, while we can't prove it, we have every reason to believe it exists. And from that, he said, if morality is to exist, it must follow these prescriptions. If justice is to exist, there must be a benevolent entity. So his argument for the creation, his argument for God's existence was, if justice is supposed to exist, if justice is ever to exist rationalistically, then there must be a life after death, because there are individuals who die who don't get their comeuppance, where justice isn't served. You know, that individual who slaughters a million then shoots themselves, you know? We look at that and we don't lose our faith in justice. That's because justice relies on a world after this world. This is the argument Kant makes, all right? Now, if there is a world after this world, which is necessary for the existence of justice, well, then your actions must carry out of there, and there must be a judger. Okay, so in order for justice to exist, there needs to be a world after this world, and there must be a judger in that world to seek that justice. Okay, now what does that judger look like? All right, well, that judger needs to have all the facts of the matter. They have to have all the facts of the case. So they need to be omniscient. They need to know all of these things, right? So that's one thing. They need to be omniscient because they need to know all the facts of the case. 2, they need to be able to impose a punishment on individuals. So they need to be omnipotent. They need to have the power to impose the judgment after this world. So they need to have that power, that omnipotent power, okay? That's the second one. And third, they need to be a good and just entity. Because if they are a malevolent entity, the power and the knowledge isn't good enough. You know, we have people that have power and knowledge and are malevolent, and the action isn't just. So they need to be omni-good or omnibenevolent. Just so happens that's the Judeo-Christian God they're speaking of. Omnipotent, all-powerful, omniscient, all-knowing, and all-good in order for justice to exist. Now, why am I saying this? Because Kant, in order to create a universal morality, had to start with, if morality is to exist, it needs to look like this. If justice is to exist, it needs to look like this. There needs to be a fundamental will that is good in its inception. Because all the virtues and all your actions, if they don't come from good intention, they easily become immoral. And I think that's what we have here. We have an arrow awakening. The arrow is Sephiroth, created to be a sword, in my example, an arrow. And he looks back, and instead of seeing the goodness that is Shinra, the electric company, this company that provides power to individuals with this kind of duty, and the greatness that he became there, he looks back and he sees a researcher who was overstepping his moral bounds outside of his moral bounds and is just lusting for power in his creation. So now he's seeking a new purpose. Also, at the same time, it just so happens that during this time, the entire world and his entire existence, the existence he thought he had, is now gone. It's destroyed. It's like a woman who has been cheated on her entire life by her husband of 20 years, all of a sudden finds that her husband is cheating. This is like the Robert Nozick experience machine example here. This individual finds out that their husband's been cheating. All of a sudden, the last 20 years are an absolute illusion. When she was with this individual and they were having dinner, what she thought was an intimate affair of dinner was actually him trying to hide another life. When they would go out and they would go on family trips or whatever they may be, the individual she thought that was sharing that adventure is no longer the same individual. Her entire world has been destroyed. And it's like Robert Nozick will ask, well, do you move forward with truth? Or do you move forward with pleasure, knowing it's an illusion? You know, so it's a tough question. I have some students who are very honest say, I may not want to know. After 20 years, I might want to remain ignorant. Well, when you're a being like Sephiroth and you're that high in the hierarchy, you don't get to live with the illusion. No, you have to find another purpose now. And then what takes place of this purpose? Well, we will come to see, right? I hope you folks enjoyed the discussion, but I try to keep it still and philosophically relevant. But at the same time, I go where my mind goes as well. So have fun, everyone. Take care. And as usual, take some time with the classics because they will awaken that hidden dragon within all of you. See you next time.